Welcome to another episode of Startup Grind. Tonight we're going to be chatting to Bob Skinstad. He was a successful Springbok rugby player and now he's turned into a successful entrepreneur. Listen to his story.
My name is Grant van der Wagen. I'm the co-founder of thesocialvibe.co. I'm looking forward to the events tonight, and I think you're going to get lots of business insights from Bob Skinstad and everybody at Startup Grind. I think it's going to be a good event.
My name is Jonathan Pussen, the owner of Rush Indoor Trampoline Park, South Africa, and what I'm looking at getting here today is just give guys hope and determination. I mean, don't give up. This is Rush Indoor Trampoline Park is startup number 14 for me. So yeah, it's not easy, but you got to push and grind and you'll get through it.
Okay, basically my name is Shim, I'm from Group 1 and I want to learn the minds behind people who are interested in these things, so to better my own decision making in future.
Awesome. I'm Timmy. I'm also from Group 1, but I'm also part of Startup Grind Cape Town. And yeah, it's all about networking, building relationships and building good businesses.
Hi, I'm Paul Mbambani. I'm from a company called Slim Solutions, whereby we do mobile development. We're on the mobile platform. We bring solutions to mobile devices. What brings me here is networking. I'm here to network. It's my first time here and I'm hoping to learn a lot and network with quite a number of people.
Hello, I'm Megan from So Fruit. We're here this evening with our brand new smoothie range that we'd love you all to try.
Cool, my name is Dirk Tolkien. I'm from a company called Semantica Digital. We build websites in WordPress, usually e-commerce related, and we do online marketing. Tonight I'm hoping to see what Bobby's been up to, because we were at varsity together.
Hi, I'm Mark. I'm the founder of BoxChamp, and we are a software solution for fitness facilities for management and CRM, especially in CrossFit. I'm here to learn as much as possible from someone like Bob Skinstad, who's been through thick and thin with his experiences, and also to meet people in the industry.
So, thank you very much for coming. Bob is going to be speaking tonight. Bob Skinstad, born Robert Brian Skinstad, and he was born in Zimbabwe, believe it or not. All the cool people come from Zimbabwe, right? No? Durban, Eastern Cape. Okay. Anyway, South African, Zimbabwean-born South African rugby player. He's had 42 times for the Springboks. He's scored 55 points, of which of them 11 are tries. I think that's quite impressive. He's now spoken in 25 different countries on motivational speaker. He's now the chairman of the Rugby Business Network in South Africa. He's the tourism ambassador for the Overstrand. Hands up who knows where that is. Right, that's actually pretty impressive. Not too bad. Okay, so it's Gans Bay, Hermanus, that side of the world. I had to Google that, yes. And he's also, well, actually, the Overstrand, just listen to this, is the best run municipality in South Africa. I see it's Bob's influence there, I'm sure. And then a senior broadcaster on SuperSport. And above all of this, he's also a successful entrepreneur and a dad and a husband. I mean, this guy's like Superman. Guys, can you please all stand up, get up, give a massive round of applause for Bob Skinstad. Woo!
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Welcome, Bob. Welcome.
Gee.
Thank you so
Thanks very much,
coming.
bud. I appreciate it.
The stairs. All right, so we're going to be sitting here.
How to set me up for failure.
Thank
you very much.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, you know that I'm terrified of bicycles. Okay.
I did not know you were
I actually chatted to them about getting onto this, and they said I could move very, very slowly. Is that okay?
You may.
It's not a competition.
We will not be checking how many times you backpedal with what you say. We won't be checking your strides. You can make it harder and softer here. It's quite a cool setup. Okay, so welcome. Thank you for speaking on Solid Ground. We appreciate that.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks very much for having me. It's good to be here. Nice to see some familiar faces. Thanks for coming along.
Cool. So you were born in Zimbabwe and obviously you moved out here when you were a youngster. Why did you come to South Africa? Why did your parents move here?
So I was born in Zim in a little town called Bulawayo. My dad was remains a doctor, but finished his studies there, and he was then involved in. He was a medical field professional in the war. So post the Rhodesian Bush War, we had to get out. So I think end of 81, moving into 82, we came down to South Africa with a big exodus of a lot of the people who'd lived in southern Rhodesia at that stage.
Okay. And you went to school, you went to boarding school at Hilton College.
Yep.
Did your parents live somewhere else in Cape Town and then?
No. I actually, I was about 10 years old. I used to borrow some money from the guys in the kitchen in the boarding house to phone my mum to say, don't come and pick me up at 2 o'clock, come and pick me up at 5 o'clock. We only lived about 5 kilometers from the school. But
really?
So I then I approached my folks and asked them if I could move into the boarding house. That was junior school, standard 3.5-ish, and then I boarded all the way through. I went to a boarding high school as well, Hilton College. I'd been at Highbury, and I think Hilton's still there's only 2 full boarding schools. So in the old days, we were lucky. I mean, we had the whole school was boarded, so you were mates with everybody.
Day guys and
exactly, and we only got, I think we got 1 weekend a term or a half term back at home, but my folks were always close enough, so watched sport and spent time with us as well.
Okay, and then from there they obviously moved to Stellenbosch.
No, I moved to Stellenbosch. My folks stayed in Durban.
Okay.
My dad and I had, it's amazing how much he learned between the time I was 17 and when I turned 21. We sort of had a difference of opinion, a political difference of opinion, and I went to Stellenbosch University actually on a rugby bursary.
Okay.
And it was a sort of a standoff time. I was paying for myself, so it was the only place I could get a rugby bursary, and I took it at Stellenbosch, and I've never gone back. I stayed from Durban here, went to Marty's, unfinished degree unfortunately, but I started playing professional rugby. In my second year. Well, I don't know. The time will tell. But I stayed. I married a girl from Cape Town, and that for me was more than reason enough to stay in this part of the world, and I've been loving it ever since.
So you grew up in Durban, you could say, kind of did high school and low school.
Yeah.
And you played for Western Province.
Yeah.
What is it like when you played against the best team, the Sharks?
Well, I was lucky when I was playing here. The results for the Sharks were about the same as they were this last weekend. So I felt that I'd made the right decision, but I've still got a lot of mates who still can't forgive me for that, and I get phone calls. I get more phone calls when there's a Sharks Stormers or Sharks Western Province game than anything else from schoolmates and that. And my little super brew pool of my high school mates, it's all having a go at me, and they'll pick literally the opposite of what I pick on purpose.
That's good friends. Good friends.
Yeah, good mates, exactly.
Yeah. So growing up, I mean, you ended up playing for the Springboks, and did you know from a high school stage that I'm going? Did you have your sights set on that, or was it just something that came about?
You know what? It's funny to say this, but I think it's literally the entire second half of your sentence. I had not no idea. I mean, I knew that I had ability in rugby, but rugby wasn't even a profession. You know, it wasn't an option. You could be a rugby player, but you couldn't do that for a living. And you know, although there's stories about guys and taking, I think they call them kufertjies, little sort of cash envelopes of money, etc. And I mean, that was rife when I started in the professional era. But I was literally the first contracted under 19 player.
Wow.
Post World Cup '95. I captained South Africa under 19 in the same year that South Africa won the World Cup.
Okay.
So I was the first guy to go over where actually rugby suddenly became a vocation, something you could do for a living legitimately, and it hadn't been an option. So no, I didn't know about it. I didn't know that it was something I would get into. I worried a bit actually. I went to Stellenbosch. I had a girlfriend at school. I did a post-matric. I studied A-levels. I only learned down here that you can actually do another kind of post-matric, because you just do matric again so that you can play rugby again. I didn't realize it was an option, otherwise I probably would have done it. But our school, being affiliated to the UK, you could actually do A-levels. So I got down here and sort of got straight into sort of first and a half year of varsity, and then was straight into a rugby career.
Okay. What was it like being a Springbok rugby player? I mean, you're getting out there, you got, I mean, it was a substitution that you went out on the field for the first time, playing out there. Obviously, you did well in the game and you rise as a star. What is it like psychologically on you coming? I mean, you came from boarding school, now suddenly having all this media attention.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think everybody thinks it's hunky-dory. Everybody thinks that the end game of their startup is going to be a Google or a one of the unicorns that everybody's talking about this year, and you're going to get there and there's going to be no trials and tribulations. That of course is the biggest load of rubbish ever, and I think it's the little nuances that people don't know about. So it wasn't easy. It's still not easy. There's bits of my life that I would give back tomorrow, but because it comes as a whole package, I would never give it back. You know what I mean? It's a great privilege to travel the world and see it. I mean, I think I learned more about business because of being exposed to international markets and that. I mean, we were coming out of a very isolated period of South African political history. The rest of the world didn't see us, and we were the first generation of guys who started to go touring and seeing the world, going to Australia, New Zealand regularly, Europe, USA. I mean, I've toured to the most incredible places because of rugby. So I've got to say that was amazing. But doing rugby for a living is not amazing.
You mean you get bumped around, you get knocked around,
no, that bit's the easy bit. The hard bit is waiting the whole week for 80 minutes of action. That's all you do.
Training and your mindset. And
you're training, you're working with other people. There's politics in rugby like you won't believe. There's politics in sport. We all know that. But the biggest frustrating thing was that you can't do just the 80 minutes of pure exhilarating you, because then that's when, if you're training hard enough and working on it, that's when you're in your flow. You almost want to do that every day, and do the training, swap it out, do the training stuff for 80 minutes on a Saturday, but you can't, So it was a great frustration for me, but it's part of what international sport's about.
You moved overseas after the middle of your career, I suppose, and in London, and there you actually tried to buy over a ex-rugby or a rugby club in London. Was that you venturing out into the entrepreneurial?
Well, yeah, it was a bit. I mean, I'd got into sort of the hospitality industry as a player. I'd started doing some public speaking, which I really enjoy. Trying to link a bit of sport and business, and very tenuous at best in the early stages. But I think getting better as you learn more. But I went overseas. I actually fought with a coach about. I had a difference of opinion about why we were all playing. And what we were doing and how we should all go about it, etc. So I quit. I retired, and I went retired from South African rugby, and I went overseas. I played rugby in the UK. I joined a club with the guy who invented, he didn't invent, his grandfather invented Bisley office furniture. So very, very wealthy individual, lovely guy. His name's Tony Brown. He had a factory in a small town in Wales called Newport, and he funded the rugby club. And so he brought all these international stars literally to this tiny Welsh town. And I went there because it was a tremendous contract. I was the highest paid rugby player in the world for 8 weeks, which was nice.
Wow. 8 weeks.
Well, I say 8 weeks.
Game and then
No. Luckily, there were 7 games in there. So luckily, but I went to him and I was bored as hell. I was in 150 miles striking distance from London. London was full of like agency startups. A lot of creative work was being done. There was a huge, big sort of surge of digital and the understanding of where the future was going in advertising, etc. And I just felt completely out of it. So I started talking to an old mate of mine. He was working in a law firm in town, and they had an opportunity to work for one of the South African sort of wealthy South African families. I wouldn't say industrialists because they've got different brands, etc. But they wanted to start up a rugby team over there. So we worked on that for a while, and to do that, I went to the owner of the club and I said, look, you've been fantastic and thank you very much, but my heart's not in it at all. And I went back to London. I worked at Saatchi & Saatchi. I literally went cap in hand looking for a job. I worked for a guy called Kevin Roberts, who's still the worldwide CEO of Saatchi & Saatchi. He literally just got the job. And we set up a sports-related ad agency and then consulted to all of their top brands that were using sport in their advertising campaigns, from Ariel using Tim Henman with the, it has to be white campaign for Wimbledon, all the way to Sony Ericsson, we're in ladies tennis, T-Mobile, we're in that stage it was Tour de France. So then traveled around, and for me there was so much more stimulating and interesting. Worked with Adidas on the All Blacks campaign. So you're working with these sportsmen who understand the basics of sports, and you're doing this marketing. Basically. Yeah, exactly. So it was like all the things that meant something to me, and I could play. I played social rugby, completely amateur rugby.
The best person on the team, right?
Well, I was lucky because I played for the Barbarians a couple of times a year, and they're sort of a team that's picked from different guys. Nice. But they've obviously got an availability problem, which I didn't share. I was available for every tour that they wanted to go on. So that's why I toured North America, South America,
right?
Exactly. I've been to Georgia on 3 rugby tours. I mean, no one's been to Georgia.
Ask you, who was your worst room rate when on tour?
Oh, that's easy. A guy called Kobus Visagie. Kobus Visagie is actually, he's in VC. He's a good guy for you guys to get hold of. I think he's got a company called African Venture Capital. They're looking for projects in this space, but he snores. So don't go on a tour with him. He snores so much we had to move him.
So he must have come on the venture train.
Off the floor, exactly. We'd put him on another train. That's how bad it was. He could come to the meetings, but no, he snored so much that we had to move him to a different floor on the hotels.
No way.
Yeah. But an incredibly bright guy. What a lovely guy to play with. He was very good at what he did, but terrible as a roommate. Wouldn't do that again.
Okay, so tell us about the iTech. I mean, that's you're going into corporate there.
Yeah, so I came back from overseas, and I felt that I had to, I don't know, I think, and everybody gets to the stage, I've definitely will hopefully do this forever, but I sort of reassessed where I was. I looked at strengths and weaknesses, and I'm probably a little bit loose on administration and that kind of thing. I say probably, and people who work with me would giggle, but I'm definitely a bit loose, and I thought a little bit of a stint in corporate. So actually I bought the rights to an iTech here in the Western Cape. Okay. The basics of the business are simple. An ex-sportsman can open any door. If you can get a guy who can sell a product, you've got a chance. The product at that stage has been technological products, office-based solutions, and those are of varying strengths in varying businesses, and it's more about the sale. It's about the guy who either gets it over the line because you like him, or it's because the product has been made apparent to you more often. And I used that to take our little iTech from where we were, and got to a stage where we sort of got bought as a senior management out of that into a bigger business, which is the business I'm still in at the moment.
Okay. Okay, so that's iTech. The business you're in at the moment is Seartec. Tell us about Seartec.
Well, Seartec, it's part of a listed company. They do the same thing, so they would have competed. So iTech, the cliches abound, but a lot of ex-sportsmen sell copiers and that kind of thing. Now, there was a dirty era in the industry where guys would I suppose, pull the wool over small business owners' eyes and give them sort of long-term contracts, etc. We understood that there was definitely a market for financing, a technology product in businesses. Everybody needs them. These days, guys, are financing tables and chairs, but the quality of the product, the quality of the service, etc. So we started targeting bigger businesses, bigger contracts. not necessarily the machine itself, but more a managed print solution, a managed office environment, etc., which is what the datas of the world have been doing on the networking side for a long time. We were just in the small business space. And we came up and pitched to a business who liked what we were doing. They had the rights to the Sharp brand, which had taken a pounding in South Africa, amongst 15 other brands that they've got, including security solutions as well, access control, biometrics, those kind of things. And we basically then with them did a deal, and we've packaged it all together. And Seartec has got a lot of big customers, not so many small customers, but we do sort of front to back. So your whole print network server environment, all the way through to the thumbprint access to the door, to the screens that you use to advertise your business, in your business, your TVs, etc. And we manage that package. So I've got a fantastic group of guys who do it. I've been between iTech and Seartec, I've been there 5.5 years now. I don't think I'm going to be doing it forever because, for me, I'd like to go back onto the entrepreneurial route. And one of the things that we'll talk about later is following my passion on that. But it's been an incredible experience of learning for me, understanding executive committee, roles, responsibilities, management, just like coming out of a sports team. Who does what, why, who reports to who, why.
So actually, being
who's
on
responsible.
What is the similarities between being a sportsman at a top level that you were at and business or entrepreneurship? Actually, let's make it into three.
Well, I think, it's such a broad question, So people would say, okay, what did you learn from sport that you take to business? And you can sit up with a microphone and say, oh, this is what you should do. But you can't narrow it down. I'll tell you what has worked for me. 2 or 3 things that I've learnt that I think apply to both. One is Richard Koch, who sort of has been the guy out there selling, the Pareto principle or the law of the vital few as the 80-20 principle. It's 100% true. It doesn't matter whether you own a restaurant, because I do, or you're in a corporate environment, because I am, or you've been in a rugby team, because I was.
Explain to us, what is the 80-20 rule?
So the 80-20 law is, it's literally the law of the vital few. So 20% of the actions will engineer 80% of the outcomes of anything. And you can split it up into 80-20 thinking, which is general. So you go, okay, so what are the 20% of my customers that I need to spend more time on because they're generating 80% of my revenue? What are the 20% of my customers that I need to fire because they're generating 80% of my trouble? Or what are the 20% of my sales staff that are generating 80% of my income, and how do I manage them, etc. And if that's just 80-20 thinking, that's on one side, but then you can split it up into 80-20 analysis, and you can actually crunch the numbers. You can talk about the inputs of hours worked versus output when you're doing the right things, and hours worked versus outputs when you're doing the wrong things. It came from a guy called Wilfred Pareto who studied it was Renaissance Italian families, and how 20% of the wealth was, 20% of the people controlled 80% of the wealth of the country. And it's literally, it's a rule of thumb, sometimes it's 22, 78, exactly. But if you understand it and you can apply it to your life, I'll tell you a little story. So when we worked with the Stormers, it was the number one thing. I read the book. We were on a plane, came back from an overseas game on a plane. I read the book, and I thought, that is so true. We've got guys who some people might recognize. I'm getting old now, but the Brayton Paulses of the world, Louis Kuhn, Bram van Straten, these guys going on to be Springboks, Corne Krige, and myself and Percy Montgomery. When you play in a team and we give the right people the ball, we are being more effective. And then I went into the depth of that with the coach, and Alan Solomons, who's a lawyer by training, but an exceptional coach and a fantastic mind to work with. He said, well, let's go deeper into that. And we worked out that we had 5 people in the team who, if they got the ball most of the time, we were literally 80% more effective. And we re-engineered the team. We had and I say those names now, you recognize them now, but the year they turned up in our team, nobody knew them. Percy was too small and too skinny. They called him the mosquito. Brayton Paulson was a kid from a farm in Ceres that nobody had heard of. Louis Kuhn had come through the ranks here, so that's 1, but 1 out of 24 doesn't put you in a position. And we literally re-engineered our game plan to get the guys who were effective with the ball the ball more often. And it turned around the way we thought about it, turned around the way we played. That guy we were talking about earlier, Kobus Versace, an exceptional scrummager, we worked out how to help him scrum on our ball better. So literally the whole setup was set up around him because he was the power point in the scrum. But then when it came to getting the ball after a ruck or a maul, if he was in the fly half position, he was in the wrong place. And we all knew that in the team. So it was easy then to go and review what had gone right or gone wrong. I bought into a restaurant chain. We took over, and you sort of sit at this table and you go, wow, this is amazing. I bought a restaurant. Oh, shit, what do we do?
What do we do, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know to market this, but
Exactly. We can get people to the opening of an outside loo, but it's got to work, you know? And the first thing we realized was that they hadn't employed the 80-20 principle. So we went into the kitchen, and 80% of the stuff in the kitchen was used 20% of the time. 20% of the stuff was used 80% of the time. So we cut our menu from 35 pages to 2.
Wow.
And created, a much easier to manage inventory system. It's all because of the principle.
And did it turn around the business, or was it doing well before?
Completely. No. I mean, the business is 5 times the size. And because of changing their thinking. So for me, that's the number one thing.
Did you spend 80% of your time looking at that data? Or?
No, I think what you do is you work out which 20% of your time. I mean, if I'm doing the maths, 85% of the time you're wasting, because but they're much smarter people than me, but I've got to point them in the right direction.
Sure.
And I would say it's amazing for me that the big learning there is that out of something that I did physically, and rugby for me, I was incredibly lucky, but rugby was never really, really hard work. Besides the gym and the training and stuff, I enjoyed the game, but you do those 20% of things, you get the result. And I've definitely seen that as something you can draw from one to the other, and I think the other way too.
What is your passion, and how will it assist entrepreneurship in South Africa?
Sure.
Yeah, is the sound all right, guys? Is it right? Okay.
Can you hear us? Yeah. Look, what is your passion? I mean, I've got lots of passions. I've got hobbies that are passions, passions that are hobbies. I mean, I've got a lot of things I want to do. I think my passion is in South Africa and entrepreneurship in this space. My passion is I think trying to clear the clutter, clear the pathway from good people with good objectives, good ideas, and contributing businesses built around those into our not only startup, but then post-startup and then big business ecosystem, because I think it'll create jobs, I think it'll stimulate the economy. I'm a Southern African by hook or by crook and by trade. I'm not going to be here necessarily to turn the lights out, but I'm not going to go for a long time because I want to be global. But this place is my passion. So entrepreneurship in this space, I think, deserves a shed load more time, effort, money, get together. That's why I'm so proud of being lucky to be invited on the venture train, which we spoke about as one of the prizes, and that comes from Grindstone and Kit and his team. But to literally be in a train, I mean, you were with us, with people all going, how can we, as, I'd say 95% of the people there were achievers already, how can we apply our minds to making this path easier for entrepreneurs, And I think a bit like professional sport, this is one of the other learnings, is that, a lot of professional sport, the fun and the glitz and the glamour is bullshit. And the same thing in our space. Everybody thinks they got one idea and, let's go, we're going to shoot the lights out. And how many people have failed after 50 ideas? I mean, Thomas Edison talks about, he's quoted all over the world, but nobody really listens because they're like, okay, that's cool and he's so motivating, but my idea is the best idea. And we need, so for me, my passion is understanding that we've got something amazing here, in our rainbow democracy, despite whatever's going on at the moment. That's teething problems. Politics is a 10,000-year-old problem. We're not going to solve that overnight. But what we can solve is we can solve the fact that we're not right now stimulating enough in the economy, getting enough good ideas from good people and good businesses in front of the customers. So my passion is to be a little bit of a part of that and to try and find out how I can play a bigger role.
Bob's for Good and the Put Foot Foundation. Tell us about that story. how it came about, how's it going?
Yeah, look, Bob's for Good is it's a charity which has morphed. I mean, they are the same thing. The Put Foot Foundation is literally, it came from the same thing. The shoe, put it on the.
Well, explain what is Bob's for Good?
So Bob's for Good, basically, you guys have heard of Tom's. It's an overseas brand started by Blake Markowski. He goes around the world, and for every pair of shoes that you buy, he gives one away. We tried to copy it in the South African environment. I actually was at a lecture with a guy called Seth Godin in New York, and a 2-day seminar after that. I met Blake. We came to South Africa. They were going to expand here. I came back and did about 6 months of research. The problem, which still exists without a massive market, is that there's not enough people to buy one, give one in South Africa only. It's got to be part of a bigger ecosystem. And we started up. We had a go. We didn't realize that problem at the beginning, and we had relative success. We also raised money on the side, so we couldn't just be a sort of a viable business in the sustainability space. And we encountered two major problems, and out of problems come, for me, solutions and new avenues. And one of the major problems was that we couldn't facilitate all the shoe giveaways that we'd raised the money for, but then we couldn't get enough people to buy the shoes to do the one-for-one. So the one mechanism wasn't feeding the other. And then I had a guy approach me, a guy called Darren Hillhouse, who runs a rally called the Put Foot Rally. He did the Uhamba, and he's got one in the States right now. He's ex-military logistics guy, great guy. And he basically asked me for some funding to start his rally, and if it went well and took off, he would then give the proceeds to the charity. So I said, of course, and we gave him a space in our little office, and he did it. And there've been 6 Put Foot rallies. It's an incredible trip, if you can. It's 17 days, 7,000 kilometers, 7 countries. So you literally go from Cape Town in a big circle around southern Africa, and you go on any form of vehicle that you want. Scooters have been twice, but they're not that popular anymore because it was a hell of a long trip for those guys. But sort of buses, Land Rovers, combis, full of people having a fantastic time, seeing all those countries. But then on the trip, what you do is they do a giveaway at a specific school in each country of shoes that the kids, they've always picked with local charitable foundations, organizations, and they do a handover. So it's the most fulfilling thing you've ever done in your entire life. Around each corner is another African child in need, and you're there fulfilling one of the needs. They paint walls in the classrooms, put roofs on, raise money, but most importantly, actually the tactile gift of giving a pair of shoes to these kids. So they sort of morphed into the one. I got Darren then on board, and he manages the foundation. We've called it the Put Foot Foundation. The idea at the beginning from an ad agency that we worked with, which we don't anymore, but they were good guys, was that Tom's Crocs, we had a sort of something along those lines that was short, easy to say, etc. And then it became a Bob's for Good. It was the fact that Bob's was there. But we worked out that the shoes that we made and that our kids needed were different to the espadrilles, which is what Tom's gives away. Okay. In Africa, it's not as easy. You wear espadrilles on a road in the Transkei and you walk 11 kilometers to school, and they last about 3 weeks. And what we went to Barter, and we went to SAB, and we sort of got them chatting, and they actually created an African school shoe which we could give away. We invented the little, it's like a strip on the back and the front of the shoe, which when the light reflects of it from a car, you can actually see all of the reflections, gets cars to slow down, because one of the biggest problems was that we found out that kids were not only being wiped out in their masses because they were getting up so early to walk to school, but then it was something they didn't want to do, still dark, they walked in the grass, and then, like I said, we solved a number of problems, but we've scaled it back down to where we can actually, in a tactile way, give back. So we do different schools every year on the trip, and we do it in a way where we feel it's sustainable giving.
And you've recently made the foray into venture capital. Tell us about the KNF fund, and I mean, it's 12J venture, I believe. What is a 12J, and how did you get involved?
How did I get involved? Well, that's quite easy. So, Kit van Zyl, who's here with me tonight, and I were at varsity together. And one of my first, and he's far too kind to me on this. I think I was his best customer, not best business partner, because I was training for rugger, and like I said, rugger was taking up more time than anything else. So I was buying consistently 2-minute noodles and other things that were available from his snoopy, and he was always working late, so he was always open and available, and he had a lockable cupboard outside his, like any good entrepreneur, he started very early. But we had a friendship from early on and sort of turned it into the tuck shop in our res, and have remained mates. Kit and his team, Eben and Andrea, are very well known managers of Knife Capital, which obviously has been the sort of much celebrated recently, exit partners of a number of big ventures. We spoke about them earlier, but you know, the ones that you guys would know recently, you know, I think the probably most well-known one now is Frans Struwig and Garmin, who bought out Ikubu in Stellenbosch, and that was something that came through the Grindstone accelerator. So I've stayed close and friendly. I've been to, I don't know how many Grindstone pitching events, etc. And Knife Capital has been tremendously successful, you know, selling little South African startups to General Electric and to Visa and Garmin, etc. And I've been sort of percolating this idea that a lot of sportsmen like myself go through this 15-year career when you're 18 and suddenly you're getting paid money and you don't know what to do with it and where does it go. So I was always asking Kit advice on what should I tell this young guy who's got his best mate who wants to open a coffee shop, you know, because it's going to fail. And
well, not in Cape Town, I don't know. Maybe
well,
not in Cape Town.
No, well, exactly. If neither of them are there, then you know, they either lose money or it's going to fall apart. And he's always been amazing as a sounding board to do that. And you know, we got closer and closer to working together, and all three of them have been working on it. And basically, Section 12J is you know, a governmental initiative. SARS have given us, as young South Africans, a chance to get a tax-free incentive or a tax incentive to invest in South African-owned startups. You know, and there's a framework. It's sort of, you know, 5 to 50 million rand, and startups that have got to be owned majority by South Africans. They've got to be contributing to the economy. And there's, you know, and I was talking about the admin side, but Kit and them are pedantic about that. That's why they've been so good. Now, KNF stands for Knowledge, Networks and Funding, and that for me
I thought
is...
you just took Knife Capital and made it short.
Well, actually at the beginning, they were trying to work out how to get KNF into everything, and then it was like, well, it looks like a knife, so we're going to call it Knife, and then that's why Grindstone, so the whole idea there. But Knowledge, Networks and Funding, and I've said it from the very beginning. I've said it in every business that I've been in, you know, attributable knowledge from the entrepreneurs themselves. Networks can be brought from a silly old rugby player who's got a rugby business network, or a curious mind, so has met 1 million different people and can get them together and join all the dots. But funding can almost come from anywhere. The funding doesn't matter until you've got the other two, and that's where this has been an amazing venture. So now we've put it together. We launched to the press the initiative. The first fund is going to be 100 million rand, and we've got a soft launch to our early investors with a pipeline and a deal flow coming up. So a lot of the people who are on Venture Train with us, a lot of the businesses that are in the room, etc., are all linked to either Knife, yourself, to Spark Up, to, you know, we've got quite a small but very cool ecosystem in South Africa, and for me this is a nice way to bring some of the stuff that I had before, all of their ability, and the ideas that are coming through this ecosystem at the same time. Yeah. Cool. So delighted about that.
And so, okay, so beginning with the sportsmen, I know you're very passionate about helping the guys. How could this fund help sportsmen?
Well, I mean, there's an incredible incentive, and 12J, is the guys at Knife Capital help to write 12J because they want to put money back into the ecosystem. So it literally is a pre-tax. So all of the guys, angel investors are going to be paying 40 to 42% tax or there and thereabouts. Businesses, etc., that want to invest can invest through various structures of their own, but it's got to be through a 12J registered company. So for the sportsman, I can literally then say, well, you're protected because what investment starts with a 40% benefit? Very few around the world, and then because of the number of successes that the business have had, how can I help protect you? Well, I can help protect you because I'm investing. You know what I mean? So I've talked to sportsmen, and we've got a couple of sportsmen who've invested already. But my big problem is these guys have got access to capital, no ability to deploy the capital successfully or effectively because they're out there playing this game, and we all go and watch them and we think it's amazing and the life, and but then when they're 33, you get a guy who used to play for the Springboks with me 5 years later coming to ask for a job as a driver because his family borrowed money and it went pear-shaped, and and there's too many stories like that. So for me, this will be a way that they can invest, but it'll also be a way where I can, although it's in an arm's length transaction level model, and there is risk, of course there's risk, but I was always trying to mitigate as much of that risk as possible. I wish I could just go and say the stock market's not going to dip, so you'll be fine. But look what's happened twice in the last 6 years. Everybody turns around and says, "Oh, I'm worth 40% less than you said I should be in." So I've never put myself in a position to tell someone, unless I was co-investing, and I've done that on a few occasions with guys that I've played with, and luckily we've come out the right side of it because we do our due diligence and we do what Knife Capital have become famous for.
How much do you value intellectual property protection for your business, and at what point should you invest in intellectual property trademark protection? Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I mean,
after this, we're going to be opening up to questions. So get your questions
that'd be
ready,
super.
and we can all.
I think it's a great question. IP is something, and I think one of the things that Keert has spoken to me about over the years, and I would encourage you to chat to him and to look at what Knife have done is, depending on how transferable your IP is, from if you're a South African startup and you don't have control of your IP and you're trying to sell to an international business, there's going to be trouble because there's a value add and there's a marker and there's a multiple marker in certain aspects of what you're trying to sell. Everyone can sell on a times revenue model, everyone can sell on physical assets, but IP is one of the difficult to measure things. On the other side of it is that a business from overseas, I mean, we've seen what the rand and the pound and the dollar and all those friends of ours have done over the last 3 or 4 months. If you're an international company or a South African company that's borrowing international IP here and going the other way, it's a difficult thing to sell. Someone else in a foreign territory has already got the rights that you've been developing over here. You might be wanting to go to Delaware or somewhere in the UK on one of the tax break initiatives, but you can't actually move the IP, into a territory that you're going into. So I would say it's incredibly important. I wouldn't say dive into paying for it immediately, and I would say you've also got to understand what you're paying for and why. I would say that those are questions that you would immediately have to get, legal advice on, and I think it's something that I've learned. Literally as an outsider, luckily I haven't had to do that, but I chat to a guy I was at varsity with right now, and I was chatting to some of the guys from Box Jam earlier, just talking about where do you go from here? Are you going to sell to, are you going to be the next CrossFit coming from here going out? And if you are, is there not some guy who's already done what they did to my mate? You arrive in the States and they say, I see you've registered these 3 companies. Well, we actually own those names, and you currently owe us $10,000. Welcome to the States. And so there's different ways to go about it. But I would say it's incredibly important. Yeah.
Any questions? Yeah. Somebody said, Any questions? Okay.
That was easy.
That was very easy. Serious, no questions for Bob. Okay, there we go. Right at the back. There we go. Wait for the microphone. Wait for the mic. Mr. Grant.
Yes, how are you?
Is the microphone on?
Was it me?
That just broke. There goes my deposit.
Just a quick one. How important is social media to your businesses?
I think it's very important. Social media for me is one of those things that, because of the measurability side, we tend to sort of put it in a block, but you forget about social media as the modern day standing around a braai. You still remember the story, you remember the funny person, you remember the parody account, which we've all been through. We've seen guys having a go. I mean, I'm a commentator. Social media for me, the hour after I finish a match where probably the Sharks or the Lions or someone who didn't like the Stormers loses, is the worst hour of my day, because I've got to go through my vitriolic abuse being played out in front of me. And you always try and say, well, I'm not going to go back at that person, who's not worth it. And that's exactly the same as your mate attacking your idea around a braai. So it's an ecosystem and a platform that is incredibly important, but I think you've got to take it in context. If you think that only social media is going to launch your business, I think you're wrong. Look at what happened with the backlash for Uber the other day about the taxi strikes. The way they handled that was spectacular. It was like the clever, well thought out questions regarding Uber and the drivers were published on all of their social media platforms with the question and the answer. And I just felt that that was like an education tool for Uber forever. I mean, you can just literally scroll through that. You don't even have to go to their terms and conditions as a driver, but you know more about the business. So great example, and then there's bad examples. So for me, it's as important as you make it, but it's one part of many parts of your business.
Any more questions? There we go. Ah, you've been spotted. Rise, sunshine. Any questions? Nobody? Okay, Stephen, take it.
So I think my question is, what do you think South Africans and specifically tech startups are the worst at? And what can we improve the most at?
Sure. Wow, in context, that's a brilliant question. I have thought about it, and I wouldn't, far be it from me to be the judge of it. I can say from personal experience that quite a lot of what we do, we idolize what's happening in Silicon Valley or some other cooler place, and we try and emulate a mini version of that, but we think we've actually done the big version. So what I've seen in businesses, and Seartec, the environment I've been in, it's almost like a corporate venturing business. They're more on the industrialist side, but they go into businesses and they get really peeved when tech businesses come to them and tell them about how they are Steve Jobs and this is what they've done. But in the context of a business which turns 5 billion rand, they're actually insignificant, and they don't know the other 9 steps between where they are now and where they should be when they're going to be successful. So I think maybe sometimes, I don't know, maybe it's a positive as well, and you'll understand why I say I've thought about it a lot. I worked at Saatchi, like I said, in London, and I was doing a big pitch to T-Mobile at the time, and we used a blackboard. We actually had a really cool presentation room, and we had a blackboard around the whole room, and then there were different configurations. You could probably sit on a stage like this with chairs in front of you, but there was one where we did chairs in the front facing out, and then we storyboarded the room, so from one around the room, and then you finish, as if you're watching the reel or as if you got it on paper, and the customer then could interact with the different things. Now, I needed a renderer to render me the story in sequence, and I found the guy that I used, and he'd been doing LED renderings for me for a year and a half, and I said, we want to do it. I showed him the space. He says, no, I don't do chalk. Now, no South African or Southern African would ever say that. They go, yep, I'm in, and he would go and buy his first ever piece of chalk and learn how to do it, So maybe that's the one thing. Maybe we think we can do it all, and I think the tech startup space is so complex that we need to maybe take on board a bit of advice to round ourselves a bit more, go through programs, and it doesn't matter which one there is. I think you can get a lot more answers out of joining a platform where people are there to give you advice and show you how they've tripped and fallen, as opposed to just, saying, I've got my startup and all I need is 150 million rand and we are sweet. Yeah, so that's the only thing. But I think in a way that's probably a good and a bad thing.
Here we go. Simon.
Yeah.
Do you think being a commentator on Supersport helps you as a business personality, or do you think it's a detriment because people think you just someone who talks about rugby and doesn't know anything else?
Other people besides you? Or
Oh, snap.
I'm teasing.
That's okay. You can handle it.
I'm teasing. I think it's 50-50. I've actually cut it down over the last 2 years. I've cut it down. I only do 2 weekend matches a month because it literally, I mean, I would be inundated with requests to do stuff that would be completely unrelated to what I do for a living, and it would be around the Supersport stuff. And what I've tried to do now is be more select about the games that I do and want to do, tournaments that I go to, and a little bit naughty about trying to keep it ones that are more effective either for my audience that I'm targeting for whatever I'm doing, or the area that I'm going, or something like that. But definitely being in the public mind, there's pluses and minuses. Pluses are that everybody thinks that because you're on TV, they've got a relationship already, so it's all cool just to jump into a conversation with you straight away. Minuses because they think because you're on TV, you can fund whatever their project is. Usually it would actually be the other way around, and a balance of the two. But definitely keeping a profile up helps for the businesses, etc. But like I said, South Africa's got such a small sports personality ecosystem that once you can get the people to the opening of an outside loo, but it's got to work. Otherwise, they're never going to come back. Thanks for the question. Yep. Where's there we go.
Hi, get the cameras ready. I want to ask you, as a childhood, you were my childhood hero, so will you please just stick out your tongue again and while you walk?
That is so...
Please.
We can have a photo together. And then
Thank you.
Yeah. Here we go, getting recognized for the wrong things, you see, yeah.
She's actually got a very cool startup, guys.
Yeah,
Talk to you.
fantastic,
Okay, you ask
I love it.
questions. Do you have a question? Yeah, Bruce, at the back. What created the most money for you? Sportsman?
The lifetime so far sports, because I played sports for more than I've been in business, but it's catching up. It's look, the one thing that you learn from players that remain successful in business is that you're a very, very long time retired. So if you don't try and earn as much as you can, that's why I said, try and be selfish and selective as a player. But then for me, it was actually about learning how little money you actually earn in those 8 or 10 years. And I started buying rental properties, and that's why I started buying in businesses. So there was crossover earnings, which I'd probably then attribute to the sports side of it, because that's why I had the cash flow. But I would definitely say that earning more out of rugby is a lot easier going forward from the business side.
You mean you can make more money and it can just grow?
Well,
whereas your lifetime as a sportsman,
lifetime as a sportsman is once it's over, it's over. Yeah, I would say that probably the top 1% of sportsmen. Remember, the 0.04% of people even have a chance of being a professional sportsman, and the top 1% could earn enough in their career not to have to work again. That said, depends where you play it and what you play. If you play the NBA or you play
soccer, man.
Yeah, exactly. Or Major League Baseball, Alex Rodriguez makes more per year than the Stormers' entire roster made in the last 10 years.
That's a scary figure.
So yeah, contextually, if I carry on with business where I'm going, it should eclipse it and then carry on. But I would say that money that you earn in that is the most important, because that's the bedrock stuff that you shouldn't get rid of, and you should try and get into earning for you later.
Okay, so Ross asks you, how do you support the guys with the good ideas before they fail?
sure, I suppose with enough money, excitement, curiosity, enthusiasm to hear and see those ideas, I would say that the guys with the good ideas need to make sure that they are good ideas. And I think the best.
And how would you do that? Would you do it by speaking to a lot of people? Would you do it by testing the market? Would you
Well,
do it by
look at the best the best VCs / growth equity partners. I love, and I'm not going to be shy about it, but I love what Keith and them do. The gateway to getting into becoming a grindstone company is flipping hard, because they only want the guys who are not going to fail. So if you're prepared to do the hard work, a lot of it's and that's where again it's sport and business. One guy comes out under 19, got the sort of cheerleader girlfriend, got the one arm out the bucky, got the dog in the back, arrives at sport. I mean, every cliche in the world. I am the quarterback, flower half, whatever it is, number 8 of the next century. First season out of school, gets a small injury, a little bit tough. Oh, I'm not sure about that. I'm definitely going to be sort of playing, but I also want to farm and I want to do another, disappears. Now, is that the guy that you want to support, or is he not? And it's exactly the same in business. A lot of guys are like, I've taken this gap year, and in my gap year, I'm going to launch Google, which is nice, but it's just a bit smaller, and I just need your money to help me do it. I'm going, there's a lot more steps to get to. So I think that the best platforms that help you get there are the guys who, can give you one of the grindstone businesses that they had to put through was due diligence. It's a due diligence tool for startup businesses. It's like, if you can't get through that, don't even email them. And every time I think of a business, and I'm like, oh, geez, that'd be great, and you write it down. And I mean, I've been a subscriber to Fast Company US for 20 years, because I used to go over long plane trips, and those are, I've got in fact, I'd love to give it away to anyone who wants to use it, but I've got literally a library of, from self-help on the one side all the way to every sort of startup VC businessman that's got a story, because I bought them on these overseas trips, bored on a plane or on a train or playing rugby somewhere, and I've got all of them, but they had to go through so much more than just having the idea, and I think that's where.
So you've got to hustle.
You've got to be hustling. You've got to be grafting, and we can look after the ideas, but then they need to do the work as well.
For sure.
How's that?
For sure.
And you know what? Sorry, what I would say is, when you said about my passion, or one of the questions, that's it. I don't have all answers at all, but I'm close enough to guys with the answers, successful guys. I mean, look what you've done just with this. My rugby business network idea came from a guy who did it overseas. I got help from him. We keep going. We've 45,000 people around the world come to listen to rugby players who've got businesses. I mean, is that even a market? Would you think it was a market? Well, it wasn't until now. They've launched they've got a wine company which you get discounts on, and they grow. That's I'm not on the commercial side of that business, but my passion is doing that with startups, because that's what's going to make the biggest difference here.
Okay, last question, or is there any luck pressing? Okay, so from Box Champ, and then from Ophelia in front here. Yeah. Who's got the microphone? Key things to look for when you invest in a company?
Look, it depends what type of investor you are. Traditionally, the guys that I'm closest to are always post-revenue, so the idea is ticking along nicely. And in fact, I've probably learned most about investing there as well, I would say, on the Seartec side. So we're part of the HCI. It's a listed company, Deneb Group. They buy, like I said, industrial businesses. So they recently bought a gutter manufacturer. Not cool at all, but very profitable. They make. They've got a company in Polyprops, which makes the plastic which you weave together to do sugar bags. I didn't even know there was a market. Bags of sugar, or sugar moved in 1 ton. Sort of. Well, it is moved in. Well, it's plastic, extruded plastic bags. They're not boxes. They're not trucks. They're bags. And there's a company. I'm like. They were post-revenue. They didn't know what they needed themselves. So I would say, post-revenue, and maybe something's getting in the way. Is it the startup themselves? Is it the market doesn't know that the product is coming? Is it that the person's head down and making these gutters in an amazing environment, but hasn't looked up to see that Townhouse Hotel are doing 70 refurbs, you know. So I'd like to sum it up by trying to connect the dots. I know it's the hardest thing in the world to do, but for me, a lot of the influences, the eclectic influences of sport on the one side, family in the middle, you know, business on the other side, allow me to look for those. And I think the events, we were chatting earlier, I was telling you about the guy overseas, the events business, which is going bananas overseas. South Africa we're the world's biggest market and platform for mass participation events. We've got the world's biggest, the world's two biggest ultra marathons, second biggest Ironman, biggest cycle race, biggest swims, all those kind of things. And I'm going, who's making money out of them? Because if it's the round table of Peter Maritzburg, then we're getting it wrong, you know. And for me, that'd be an example of like linking the dots. Like there's got to be businesses which can service those kinds of areas where we're already good. So linking sport and that, yeah.
Quickly, what does your startup do? Tell us, stand up and tell us what you do. Pitch your business, 60 seconds. He's got his pitch nailed. Brilliant. Fikile. Last question. Is it on? Is it a little green?
I don't know whether this thing is on or not. But I'm loud enough. I can actually ask. Cool. Yeah, my name is Fikile Kiva from Canva Capital. We actually do enterprise development, mainly in peri-urban and rural areas. My question to you, I don't know whether you have deserted sport development. I do have a guy who's part of my sort of client, call it. He actually is a presenter as well in Supersport, and he's interested to actually develop rugby in those areas that I do businesses. Because I actually do like agricultural initiatives there. And I think he would like to get into your network of rugby players in business. So, because he's got a sports development company, and he wants to focus on rugby. His name is Lungelo Pai, chances are you know. He's linked up to
Lungelo Pai?
Yes.
Yes, I know him. Yeah. So he's the chairman, and I'm the president at Masiphumelele Rugby Club.
Is it? Yeah, cool. And he has a very big passion to So talk to him if that's the case, because he has a passion around what I'm doing, doing enterprises like agricultural entities. Around that, we can also do the youth development in sport.
I definitely will. I'm more than happy to help him with that. Yeah. I chatted to him on Friday night. He hasn't mentioned that specifically, but I know that he's been working with the at Fishhook somewhere, Northhook somewhere in that. In between, it was a Nurek area.
Yes.
Yeah. And all of the guys come out of Masiphumelele and play rugby at our club, which we started. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So chances are you got his contacts.
Yes.
Sure.
Awesome. All right. Okay. So thank you, Bob, for joining us.